Good morning. Welcome to this month's edition of Coffee with a Consultant. I'm Melanie Lambert, Managing Director of Just Right Grants. And today we're going to talk about 5 tips for writing effective budgets for nonprofit grant writing. Thank you for being here today. I hope you have your coffee in hand. This morning, I am enjoying my regular coffee. I've added some taste of the season. I'm throwing in the pumpkin spice already, a little bit ahead of fall, but it's feeling like fall here where I am in Northwest Georgia. We get this little false fall in mid-September, and then we usually end up sweating again by Halloween. But it's fun to pretend that we're in fall and do the whole pumpkin spice thing. So I'd love to hear what you're enjoying this morning for your coffee or your tea or whatever it is that you choose to enjoy in the morning. And I'd love to hear that in the comments, and I might pick somebody to send a gift card to say thanks for joining me. So let me know. I'm excited to talk to you about budgets today, which sounds really nerdy, but budgets are one of those parts of nonprofit fundraising that most grant writers just dread and leave until the very end. But in reality, if it is well written, it can really bolster your grant writing and give you the opportunity to customize your requests to your grant makers based on exactly what their grants would fund. They also add to your nonprofit's creditworthiness, which isn't an actual term in grant writing or fundraising, but it translates really well for what I'm trying to relay there. And that's critically important. Grants are so competitive, and grant makers have to make sure that they're making wise investments. So your budgets can either paint a picture of financial stability, or they can make a funder feel like a grant to you might be a little too risky. So we're going to talk about 5 things that you can do to help when it comes time to put together those budgets for grant applications. So first and foremost, you need to know the difference between an operating budget and a program budget. Operating budgets are a planning tool that's used to predict the expenses and the income for your organization as a whole. It details the costs of the various needs of your organization and the anticipated revenue or income. I use those interchangeably. So if you hear me doing that, that's why. Usually within a certain period of time. So typically that's a year. You need an operating budget for multiple reasons beyond just grant writing, including financial reporting. But in grant writing, an operating budget will show that potential funder what you invest your resources in and how you anticipate you're going to fund those needs. Program budgets are similar to your operating budgets, but it's like a drilled down version, right? So you want to track the anticipated expenses and income and your actual expenses and income, which we're going to talk about in a second, as the same way as you do in your operating budget, but for that specific program or that specific need. So everything in your program budget should roll up to your operating budget. So think of it as like a magnifying glass on a specific line item within your overall operating budget. And program budgets serve the same purpose, and they allow you, though, to fine-tune that request. So you can be very specific to what you're asking that grant maker to support, and you can show that line item in the budget. One thing I want to add here, too, budgets, operating budgets or program budgets are not the same as your P&L. Your profit and loss is not your budget. That is a real-time depiction of what you've spent and where your profit and loss is. It's not a predictive model like the operating budget is. The operating budget is looking ahead. A profit and loss statement is looking behind you. So the second tip that I'm going to offer today is that any version of your budget should include anticipated revenue or income and anticipated expenses. So anticipated expenses are costs associated with your various projects and your nonprofit's overall needs, depending on which budget you're working on. They can be broken down into administrative, fundraising, and program expenses. That revenue or income should include a line item for each fundraising source or revenue generating source. And that could be, depending on your nonprofit, that could be a social enterprise income or program fees, but primarily it's fundraising. A bonus tip here: save time in your future grant applications by also including a column in your budget that shows actual income and expenses to date. This column will show you what you've really spent and what you've really raised. And if you stay on top of updating this, then that gives funders that real-time look at where you are in your budget throughout the year. Next, you should be reviewing your budget often. In general, anticipate that you're going to review it annually, monthly, and quarterly. And there's reasons for that. An annual review typically happens at the end of the year as you're preparing for that next year's budget. Did you stay on course? Where did your finances stray from your plan? You can use the answers to these questions to predict future revenue and expenses for next year. Monthly reviews are typically done internally, and that lets you and your team sit down and look over your finances for a particular project and make sure that you have funds available to make the purchases that you need in, say, the next 30 or 60 days. Quarterly reviews are going to be just, very similar to your annual review, but just on a smaller scale. This allows you to avoid any budget pitfalls that could happen and potentially derail a project. And it's especially critical for those fundraising revenue streams that might take a little bit longer than others, like grant writing, that you can have a few months before you start seeing a return. Next, it's important that you know what is a direct cost and what is an indirect cost. And this can be a speed bump for grant writers. Direct costs in a program budget are the specific costs that are 100% attributable to that program. So let's say your nonprofit offers art classes to underserved children. The direct costs of this program are going to be your art supplies, your art teachers, reserving that community space where you hold your events. When your program relies on certain elements of the overall organization in order to provide those services, those are your indirect costs. Things that are shared between all of your programs. So think bookkeeping, the executive director's salary, rent, technology, internet. These are all indirect costs, and a percentage of those can be attributed to the program budget. So when you're putting together your budget, just make sure you list each of these indirect costs separately, and if possible, add a note to describe how you came up with the total indirect cost per line. Next, create a budget narrative. Budget narratives can be a very helpful tool in grant writing. They let you explain anything that might not translate well in that spreadsheet. So you write out a description of your budget in terms of buckets of revenue and expenses. One great tip that I learned from a grant administrator was to always include what percentage each bucket is of your overall budget. That just saves them a step, and they can move through that quickly and see what percentage of your budget is administrative costs or program costs. And when you're drafting that narrative version of your budget, be sure to include things like the timing of your fiscal year, your existing assets like your endowments, and any potential funding partners like pending grant requests that may come up over the course of that budget year. These things, again, add to your nonprofit's creditworthiness. So those are my 5 tips for today. Budgets don't have to be as formidable as they seem. If you put the work into developing them each year, they actually help you save time and can be a really helpful resource across your organization. If you still need a little bit more help with budgets or other elements of grant writing, we have recently launched our grant writing boot camp. And I'm going to put the QR code up for that now. And it is a great resource for one of our sessions is specific to budgets and financial statements, includes some really great templates and resources that you can download to get started right away. but it really helps people that are looking to advance their skills and knowledge in grant writing. If you're coming to Coffee with a Consultant, I think that might be something that you may be interested in if you're in charge of grant writing and want to learn different ways and different approaches from our team of experts, and get some really great downloads that you can use right away. The Grant Writing Bootcamp may be something that you want to check out. It's a 6-part on-demand webinar series where you can essentially start from just a basic understanding of grant writing and feel really confident by the end of it that you're ready to submit high quality grants with a high likelihood of success. If you have any questions about the Grant Writing Bootcamp, please let me know. And it also includes a lot of perks and discounts to other resources available for grant writers, as well as 1 hour of one-on-one custom consulting with me. So I look forward to seeing you in the bootcamp. And that wraps up today's Coffee with a Consultant. I didn't even have any of my coffee this morning. I just was talking so much and get so excited about budgets. But I hope that what I shared with you today about budgets was helpful. And let me know in the comments if there's any topics that we could cover in future Coffee with a Consultant events or future webinars that may help you raise more money for your nonprofit or just make your life easier. Thank you for joining me today. I look forward to seeing you again next month or in our Grant Writing Bootcamp. Have a great day.